Welcome to a very live edition of Church Media Design TV with special guest Trent Armstrong. Well, I'm actually his special guest, and we are here at the Echo Conference. It's 9 o'clock at night. We've been doing stuff all day, and we're doing a After Effects user group. It's my first After Effects user group because I don't live in Dallas or New York or LA, and there's not really any in Grand Haven, Michigan. So we're doing one here, hanging out with some people, and yeah, hopefully we'll start one. So join with us. We're going to be talking about After Effects only today, so hopefully you guys will learn a lot. And Trent, how about you take it away?
Hi guys, thank you very much for being here. I'm so excited that everybody showed up. I can't believe the turnout. I'm very, very excited. I'm Trent. I'm with Igniter Media. I'm a motion designer there, and I'm in After Effects just about all day, every day. I go out on shoots, and when I go out on shoots from time to time, I feel like I'm just not getting anything done because I'm not working in After Effects. I love After Effects, and I hope that my love for After Effects rubs off on you guys. If you're beginners, I'm glad you're here. If you're just kind of looking at After Effects to see what's up, I'm so glad you're here. Hopefully this won't scare you off. Hopefully you'll just say, think of the potential here. And for advanced users, we need to chat.
Teach us something.
I need to learn, man. So, okay, before I get started, I was listening to Mark and thinking about some kind of theoretical things we need to keep in mind when we're doing all this stuff. And my idea about doing church media is that we should be excellent in all that we do. We should be excellent because we don't want to take people out of the service by doing crummy stuff that they don't see. You see MTV does crazy stuff, and HGTV is beautiful, and then you come to church, and the church is doing video, isn't that cute? And they forget that we're actually presenting a message. So I always have preached excellence, but I've decided to change that to we are believers. I want us to start with humility because Christ was humble. I want us to be good at our jobs, but that does not necessarily mean good at video. That means good at a working environment, and it's huge for, quote unquote, the process. The process is a video starts somewhere and a video goes to somewhere else. You start with the pre-planning, you go to final, you see it on the screens. And everywhere during that process, it shouldn't be just me. It shouldn't be just Brad. It shouldn't be just you that's doing this. If you feel like you can do that, great. But if involving someone else in the process and listening to their advice, even if it's crappy, even if it doesn't make sense, there may be some truth in what they say. Your pastor, even if he doesn't understand video, he's going to have something to say. The worship pastor, someone else, call your buddy that lives in Michigan and show him the video and say, does this work?
Test your secretary, even though she might be terrible at design, and you're teaching her what stuff should look like.
She is Joe Pulpit. She doesn't know anything about video. She will tell you if it works for her or not. Listen to people. Don't always be humble. Working in the environment I'm in right now, I work with Bart and with David Womack. I've got Matthew, who's our intern for the summer. When somebody shows a video, it's halfway through, we all gather around the computer and watch it, and it doesn't matter who it is. They pull out a pen and a piece of paper and just, you watched my video. Okay, now what do you have to say? And we all take notes. We all, if it's a good correction, we take it. We don't always take the advice, but it's always at least a general consensus. So be humble and take advice. You are not God. Okay, now anything you want to start with? I have a couple of notes here. Brad has some ideas about things we can do, but just any questions from you guys right off the bat that...
Well, where are most of you guys at as far as After Effects? Do we have people who are total novices to the world of After Effects that were like, man, I'd like to show up here just because I'm scared by this giant? It's okay to say that.
Good. But you showed up.
Thank you guys for showing up. And hopefully it won't scare you away, and hopefully you guys will take away something. The thing I will say is that don't be afraid of it. Don't be intimidated. Just start chugging away at it, and it will start to make sense over time. Yeah.
Good. Any thoughts? Anything you guys need answered right away for After Effects? Excellent. Don't fall asleep. So I'm just going to talk about some things that I feel are hugely important. Things that if you use After Effects day in and day out, you'll start to need, things you'll start to use. And one of those is fractal noise. Anybody, those of you that use After Effects, use fractal noise much? Show of hands, use fractal noise?
Noisers.
Yeah?
Unite.
Anybody put fractal noise on a layer and said, hey, it kind of looks like noise.
Weird
Kinda
clouds.
Cloudy, yeah. Black and white clouds. And then not ever touched it again? Anybody? Okay, good.
Fractal noise is based off
Make sure you go through your effects, everybody.
Well, and that was one thing that Trent actually encouraged me of. I had talked to him one day and I was like, hey, I'm trying to figure out like how to do some new stuff. And he's like, well, I just go through and try to figure out what an effect does and then see, okay, here's what an effect does, and now let's make it do something cool that's actually useful. And one thing, I mean, fractal noise, if you guys are familiar with Photoshop, fractal noise is really similar to the clouds effect in Photoshop. But clouds in Photoshop is pretty useful sometimes, but most of the time it's pretty unuseful because you apply clouds and there it is and you can't do anything to it.
Yeah, it's hard to scale or anything like that.
Whereas if we pop up fractal noise here, you'll see.
So first of all, I've changed my After Effects project to 16-bit. And that, if you're going to use gradients, that's going to help you out. So
it's going to make things smoother. You'll have more shades of gray between white and black.
Yeah, there's your little tip right there. So I'm going to create a new layer. We'll call this Fractal 1. Sorry, this is a new comp. And let me fit it in there. And we'll create a new solid. That is the hotkey Command Y. It also lives here. Under the layer menu.
Or you can right click in where all of the layers are and you'll get that contextual menu. There.
New solid. Okay, the solid is just a blank canvas. You can add a color to it, but usually it's for effects. So I've got a comp called Fractal 1. After Effects has created a solids folder for me, and I'm just going to come over here to my effects and noise and grain, fractal noise. And there are a lot of interesting types of fractal noise. That's just your basic fractal, and you can scale it to get interesting looks. You can adjust the contrasts, the brightness. So let's say I scale it down a little bit like that, contrast it out, take the brightness down, and I've got a star field.
Starry night done. And you can see already that we have so much more power than we do in the clouds effect in Photoshop. You would have to do a bunch of scaling and weird manipulation after the fact. But the cool thing is this is being generated in real time, so you're not really losing quality, and things are a little bit funner to use because you can always change them without having to sacrifice and go back 10 undos and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. That's After Effects actually purports itself as the funner application. So there are other things we can do with this. I'll just reset it right there with that little button. And my transform, I've got uniform scaling on right now, so I can uncheck uniform scaling and scale it up on the y-axis like that. Scale out a little bit on the x, and curtains. So there's a little exciting curtain. You can adjust evolution, and your curtain kind of waves. You have to, work on your contrast, but you can offset it with your fractal noise. And now we'll look at like the real reason anybody wants to use fractal noise. reset it, dynamic, this actually looks like clouds. So then just adding one more effect, distort. No, it's not offset. Distort corner pin. And what it gives me is a pin for each of these corners. I can drag them out pretty far, like that. Now I've got perspective clouds. Coming at the camera, you make your clouds
A little more
a
scary.
little more sparse.
Or sparse.
More sparse. Yeah, I'm not going for scary. This is church, dude.
Sometimes we need to bring the wrath of God.
It's crucifixion, and you
yes.
just need, you need scary clouds.
You never know.
So there's a look at fractal noise.
And you can, the reason why a lot of us turn to fractal noise is because there's an option in here that makes our life really easy. Because one thing we find ourselves doing all the time is making loops. We're making loops behind our lyrics. We're making loops for videos. We're making loops all the time. And fractal noise makes this very easy to do. And so if you just want to walk through that.
Sure. Fractal noise has an evolution option that we looked at a second ago. And basically, fractal noise is computation that looks, you're basically seeing a cross-section of this noise. If you evolve it, you see cross-sections through Z-space. If you can understand looking like through a set of clouds, you can see through Z-space. And as you evolve the clouds, I'll hold down my shift key to quickly move through this. The clouds are evolving, and you're seeing kind of a cross-section. Okay? So if I want to loop that, I can actually click this button that says Cycle Evolution. I've got a couple cycles I can do. Let's say just maybe 3 cycles. And my composition is, let's go ahead and make it a little longer than that. 30 seconds. Wonder if I have enough of this stuff up there. And if I set a keyframe here at 0, the cycle here is referring to that number, how many rotations. I'll hit U to twirl down my keyframes, and I'm going to kind of go through this stuff pretty fast, guys. If you have questions about it, feel free to email me, Twitter me, contact me somehow, and we can help. I'll help you kind of work through these things just so you understand them. It's very important to me that you guys pick this stuff up. So I'm going to cycle through to 3. I'm going to just type in 3 there. As you can see, it's a pretty fast cycle, but when it gets to the end here, I'll hit home, and it's basically the same frame. Now for the looping, if I'm going to do it right, I need to move down 1 frame. I'll select the keyframe and hold shift so it snaps to my time marker. I used page down to move down 1 frame, page up and page down, move frames forward and backward in your timeline. You can also do shift and move 10 frames forward or backward at a time. And now if I play through this, I won't RAM preview the whole thing, but I'll play through this, and you can see as the time marker loops back to the beginning, there's a seamless loop there.
And one thing just about cycles is basically how much variation you're getting as you go through. If you do 1 cycle, you're going to get very limited variation in how much those clouds are changing.
Yeah, it quickly looks like it's the same thing over and over again.
So the more cycles you add, the more variation you're going to get, but that makes you change your rotation amount, because your cycle amount and your rotation, full rotations, always have to be the same thing. So you can't just change your cycles to 5 and do 1 rotation. You're only going to get 1/5, and it's not going to loop together.
Right.
So you always need to make sure your cycles and your rotations line up and are the exact same.
Okay, so
I had a problem with that for a while, so I know you might run into the same problem.
No, that's good, man. If anything that you go through, we have probably gone through as well. Any frustration you have, anything you can't figure out, we've probably gone through as well, or will go through in the near future. So while we're sitting here looking at this looping cloud, I'd like to show you one more option here to add to this loop. And believe this is at aetutorials.net as well. If this one is not there, there's at least another looping thing that's with offset. I've got an offset tutorial in the latest Collide, the how-to issue.
And his
It's not an episode.
website is on that resource sheet as well as online, so you
Thank you.
can find it on there.
So what I'm going to do is take my offset. I'm going to just go ahead and copy that and turn off the eyeball so I can only see this bottom one here. I'll call this, wow, clouds 1. Hey, right on. And since it took me so long to type that, I'll copy and paste. Oh, clouds 2. I can do it. I think I can. So yeah, that one's off. I don't see that. I'm going to add effect, distort, offset. Now we do offset. And what offset does is it looks at the edges of your layer, actually, top and bottom, and will give you a repeat of that. So what was this right here was on this far edge. I have now folded it over to the other side and brought it onto the screen. It also works on the y-axis there. Now the trick is to make sure that this line, this seam, is covered. So what I'll do is I'll take this clouds layer that doesn't have the offset on it, and I'm just going to mask it. I will hit Q to bring up my my mask tool. Zoom out just a tad with the less than sign. Just do a mask. Zoom back in. Double M folds down, twirls down my mask properties, and I'll unlink my mask feather X and Y, and just on the X axis, I'm going to feather that.
So all we're doing here is covering that center
Covering that
seam with
seam.
a duplicate of the clouds layer above.
Okay, so there's the seam, and I've covered it, and I've still got my evolution working, but now I can add to the whole thing. This is Bart has already talked about adjustment layers. I'm just going to add my black solid in here and call this offset. Make it an adjustment layer. And what it's going to do is affect everything underneath it. I've already got my offset effect up here because it's the last used effect. And now, if I offset this, there is no seam because I have made this guy the, let's see, turn the offset off. This edge here and this edge here are right in the center. They're one pixel right next to the other pixel. So if I offset those, like so, it just loops them. And because I've put this Band-Aid over my seam, my offset sees that and gives me a seamless loop sideways. Now let's keyframe it real quick. Move it off like this. I'll RAM preview, and you can see as it moves, it also evolves. The evolution will loop, and then I can also set my keyframes up for my offset to also loop.
And one tip that you'll run into if you go try this and get really frustrated is you need to make sure that that bottom layer has the offset effect applied to it and it's perfectly in the center. If you don't have it perfectly in the center, you're not going to have a scene, or you're not going to be mirrored on each edge afterwards.
So there's some fractal noise stuff. You can also take this guy. Again, we're getting advanced, but you can see kind of how, like a little look into what we're doing. I'll take my composition, that's the fractal with a loop, move it into here, and I'm actually going to turn it into a 3D object. On the Z-axis, I'm going to rotate it minus 90. On the X, rotate it, and hold Shift S, adds the scale to, like this, and now I've got clouds coming at me. Let's do a little bit more on the Y-axis. Black solid in there. I usually create a solid and call it whatever the size is, because I just don't like to have a whole lot of solids in there. And I'll add effect, generate fill. Give that a kind of a skyish blue color. And set this to screen with my overlay modes, and I'm getting pretty close to a looping sky coming at me.
And we're not focusing so much on the design tonight because you can
Right.
you can spend hours and hours and hours tweaking glow or tweaking something like that just to get that right look. But it's more about getting some of this stuff set up so that later on you can go through and spend the hours and hours and hours making it look right after you get some of the technical stuff done of getting the loop right or get it set right in the right space.
Right. All right, so now, because I'm really anal about this,
Trent is a little bit more than myself. I kind of have flim-flammy crazy comps that I don't think he would enjoy working in.
I will launch you. So these are my pre-comps. And if I have any assets, I'll bring in my assets. Now, the point here, as you watch me organize my project, is that you're not going to be around forever. Just face it. Someday we're all going to go see Jesus. And maybe somebody needs to adjust your After Effects composition when you're gone.
It could happen.
And if you don't organize it, they're going to wish you went to hell, basically. Maybe not that harsh, but you want to set yourself up for success. You want to set your coworkers up for success. You want to set your team up for success. So if you create an After Effects project and you label things, you organize your pre-comps, you make things easy to find when someone else has to come in, you're out of town, and somebody that kind of understands After Effects has to come in and change some text somewhere in some composition because the sermon title changed Saturday night, they are going to love you if they open it up and it says sermon title text, change here, or something like that. They just, okay, click, sermon title, render, okay, everything's cool, and they don't have to spend 4 hours going through your stuff, and they're missing time with their kids and whatever.
And I would encourage you guys that for those of you who are like me and you're on a team by yourself and you don't see that foreseeable future that you're going to have a friend come mess around with your After Effects project, I would encourage you guys to start sharing. And you need to organize because when you start sharing with friends and say, hey, here's a project, you want to check it out? And maybe you can tweak this and do something fun with it. Now they can actually work through your project and not spend light years trying to figure out where you did one thing versus another.
It's huge. And when Bart came to work at Igniter, I'm not trying to throw him under the bus. He is
But you are.
Such an amazing designer. It's such an honor to work with him because I'm not a designer. I get to a lot of times put in motion what he does. But when he came to Igniter, he had stuff like layer 1, layer 2, layer 15, solid this, text layer that. And so I started beating into his head, organize your projects. He walked over to my desk one day and he said, Trent, you're going to be so proud. I organized my project and I didn't look at it for a month. When I opened it back up, I knew what was going on. So it's not just for other people, it's for yourself.
Real quickly, does anyone have any questions as to stuff that we've covered so far? Anything you're a little vague on or how it applies to other stuff? Yeah.
This might be, well, I'm sure it's very advanced, but if you've got your looping background, can you do like another animation that actually kind of moves that around? It's like you have your loop that's going, and then that loop itself is moving around.
Yeah.
Just the position of the layer?
Yeah, can you control that and make that a loop also?
Uh-huh.
So what he asked is can you take a loop that you already have and then basically what you're going to do is pre-compose it. So pre-composing is basically taking a composition and then putting it inside of another composition. So it's only seen as a singular layer instead of all of these different layers. You could kind of think of it as a folder in some respects. It's different than that, but
So if let's just,
show it.
I'll take this guy and mess with it a little bit so you can see the point of the pre-compose. So there are two levels of the effect going on there, just for some interest. And I'll take these two guys here, layer, all the way down to Shift-Command-C or Shift-Control-C on a Windows machine, pre-compose. They want me to give them a name, so this will be Clouds Pre-Comp 1. I'll just call it Clouds Pre-Comp. I don't need to open it because I'm pretty confident I like it the way it is. And it gives me this single layer. The comp is added here. And I can just drag that into my pre-comps folder. And now there are several ways to do a loop. You don't have to use expressions to do a loop. You can set position keyframe here. I'll copy it, move down a little bit, move down a little bit. Let's not move down quite so far. One more. And we'll find, I'm going to jump in here and adjust my length. So to adjust the length of this comp, I'm just going to hit O to go to the end of my layer. N, the letter N, sets the out point of my work area. Composition, trim comp to work area. So now it's the exact length, home and end, it's the exact length of that layer. Back to expressions, Brad, and see the exact length there. And set these guys up. I can also kind of get them lined up like I like them. Select them all by clicking the position transform property. I'll hold Option or Alt on Windows and drag, and it relatively scales my keyframes, the distance between my keyframes. Hold Shift to lock it to that out point. Select my layer, hit O, and it goes down to the end there. Let's just make sure we're doing it correctly. I'll copy. What did I do? Home, I'll go to the out point. Hit paste, just to make sure those are the same keyframes. And now, if I hit O, I go down to the end, and we can play through it to see that it goes through all those keyframes and then right back to that beginning keyframe.
And so then I could turn that into a pre-comp, and I could loop that and turn that into a pre-comp.
You could just keep going into infinity on how many times you do that. And so basically you now have a loop inside of a loop. And you can just, the sky's the limit as to what you can do. It's all up to your creativity on what you can do with it.
Now, since we started talking about keyframes there. Let's talk about the different kind of keyframes
Great.
you can have.
Keyframes, if you don't know what keyframes are, you're setting one thing in space. The computer knows one point and knows another point, and then the computer does the work to figure out what goes on in between. That's called tweening.
In After Effects, it's interpolation. In
Right.
Flash, it's tweening.
Tweening, which I started in Flash, so
Right.
there
Which
you
is-
go.
It's a great place to start if you're going to move to After Effects because some of the concepts are the same. Coding you bring into After Effects. And
That's how I learned all. Flash coding is all based off JavaScript, so that's the only reason I had a little head start
Yeah.
on expressions was because of Flash. But that's all, when you're setting those keyframes, you're just letting the computer figure out what goes in between. But how those keyframes work is what we'll talk about
Right.
next.
Okay, so I'll make a solid. And this one is going to be, let's say, 300 by 300. That's the name of it. And then now I'll tell it the actual size. And let's make this guy reddish orange. And one of my favorite tricks, I'm punching Q to cycle through my shape layer tools over here. I'll get to the ellipse tool, and I'm just going to double click the ellipse tool. Bam. And it sets a mask around the bounds, out to the bounds of my layer. Gives me that perfect circle because it's 300 by 300. And now I'm going to animate this ball. Let's see. Okay, you can see how After Effects kind of deals with, shows me the motion path and kind of a wiggly motion path. Now, I can, with my pen tool, I'm going to hold down Option and click on that keyframe. Now it's a hard-edged keyframe. Let's right-click it. And it has told me the keyframe interpolation is linear. You can see that there's a bonk.
So you can see the difference between the two keyframes. The bottom one is a linear keyframe, and the top keyframe, when it goes back up, is not a linear keyframe, and you can see how it's rounding the path in there. Mm-hmm. And sometimes this, especially when you start working in 3D space with cameras and that kind of stuff, this can become really annoying because it's going to round your path around corners, and you're like, well, I just wanted it to go here and then just move forward. And you a lot of times just need to select all your keyframes and toggle or change your interpolation to linear instead of spatial, I think is the other.
And we can talk about how to whip your keyframes into shape in a minute if we can all stick around. I'm not sure how much time you're willing to give back here, Matt. Matt's good. So while we're looking at it, these little dots in here are your timing for the interpolation between your keyframes. If I move these two keyframes closer together, you can see the distance between the dots change. The further they are apart, the faster the movement. I'm sorry, the closer they are, the faster the move. All right, it's inverse with your distance to your keyframes. The keyframe's closer means your object's going to move faster, means your dots are going to be further apart. Keyframes further apart means your movement is slower, means more steps that your object has to take. So the keyframe, these little dots are closer together. You can take a look at that on your After Effects. Okay, so I've got a hard edge there, and we kind of come up and over like that. Now, let's say you have your sermon text, and your sermon text needs to come on from off the screen Now I'm going to move this guy off the screen. This is where I want it to be. I'll set it to 2 seconds. This is where I want it to end up. So I'm just going to click a keyframe there because I know that I like that position. So I'll come back to the beginning. I'll hit V. That's my arrow tool right there. The V key. I'm big on hotkeys. Grab it, slide it off. You can also grab here and slide it around, hold shift, move it off quickly, because it just dragging the slider with the mouse moves it 1 unit, 1 pixel. Dragging the slider and holding shift moves it 10 at a time. Okay. Now I've got 2 keyframes set. It interpolates the motion, but when the Bible text comes in, it just gonna slam into place. Bonk. That is not pleasing to the eye. So what I'll do is I'll let After Effects do a little easing on that for me. I'll right click. There's some hotkeys for this, but right now I'm going to right click, Keyframe Assistant, Easy Ease In. And you can see the keyframe changed its shape. It's no longer diamond. It's now diamond on one side. Looks like a little defender ship.
Space Invaders.
Yep. So what it's going to do is interpolate that in smoothly. You can use keyframe velocity if you want it to move in slower. That's the default, 33.33. The higher you adjust it, the slower it moves in. And when you adjust your keyframe, After Effects, or when you move your keyframe in the timeline, After Effects adjusts itself to that. If you want to have a little visual picture of it, you can see kind of there's a little ramp in there. If you want it to start slowly and move over, let's go to that keyframe there. We'll start there, and we can have it ease out.
Kind of ramps up to its fastest and then
slows down.
Eases into it. This is really handy in fading a lot of times, because a lot of times you want it to like kind of start fading and then quickly leave, or like slowly come in and then really ramp up, and you don't want it to be so linear, but you don't want it to be so percentage 10, 20, 30, 40. You want it to have a little bit more of an ease into it, and so that makes these easing keyframes work out really well for a lot of different things, but you'll use them a lot.
All right. What's next, Brad? Do you have something?
Well, I wanted to see, like, have you guys seen anything that Trent's done or that I've done or that you've seen out there that you're like, I know that's After Effects. What does that take to do? Like, you're trying to accomplish something. Here's the videos we're making in our church. I know that we have thrown up for questions a couple times and it's kind of silent, but I know that you guys are like, this is what I want to do, but I still can't figure out how to do it. Does anybody have projects or things they're trying to work on? Go for it.
Like the backgrounds downstairs in the vendors area, those guys that create those motions.
Yep.
You know, some of those are very advanced, obviously, but you know, yeah. I would like to do something like that.
So just making loops. You guys, are people in the room looking to make loops for their churches? You guys are interested in that kind of thing? There's a lot of different ways, and with fractal noise, we kind of covered one, and offset's another really easy way to do some looping things. Trent, are there any other simple things that, I mean, I could show the pinwheel effect.
What about light? Like simulating some light effects, some light dancing, you know, kind of across. I think right now a lot of the, I'm seeing a lot of, it's almost like things in the foreground out of focus, kind of, you know.
Blurry, like the lens blur
Right,
stuff.
blurry dot lights that kind
Yep.
of come in and out and just kind of add a little depth to the composition.
Yeah, a lot of that is using particles. In particle generators, there's a free particle generator that comes in After Effects. It's called CC Particle World. that you can do that with. I'll just throw out to you guys, you can check out Arwen Rabinowitz's site, which is allbetsareoff.com. I don't know, it's on the sheet. And he has a lot of stuff on how to do loops of particle systems that are really easy to go through. Trent's showing kind of, you have your particle generator there. That's kind of the default, but you can make it look a lot different.
Right. I don't know, I mean, let's see. Got a birth rate. We can adjust the birth rate down. Be able to see a little better. We can change the particle. There are options in here to do some gravity. Let's see, rendering. Let's have it bounce. I'll move my producer. Let's get back a look at it. Sending that kind of up in the air.
You now
There's
have a
sparkles.
sparkler.
Yeah, you can actually turn gravity off here, or invert gravity. And move this guy down. And there, Art Benowitz has a good tutorial about looping particles. Did you say that already?
Yes.
Okay. He does it basically the way I would do it. And so it's very helpful. Now, just for fun, you don't have to follow along exactly here. I'm going to add a null and a camera. Put the null in 3D space and attach the camera. So now, if I spin the null, the camera rotates or revolves around the center point there, and that gives you a perfect circle around. Just kind of for your edification here, if you were to try and do a perfect circle with the camera, by keyframing it, you just flat wouldn't be able to. But if I adjust the null here, you can see the camera goes in a perfect, this is the camera right here. Rotating the null, parenting the camera to the null, and rotating the null spins the camera, revolves the camera in a perfect circle around that.
And a null object is basically an invisible object that you can use to control or manipulate other objects. So parenting the camera to the null, all we were doing is saying, here's this invisible object that appears in 3D space, and we're going to take the camera and link it to it. So whatever we do to that null object, the camera is going to do as well. So if we move the null across the screen, it's going to move the camera across the screen. But if we rotate the null, the camera is going to rotate around it and stay an equal distance, and that's why you're going to get that perfect circle around there. And one big reason why you would want to use a null parented to a camera is because the camera, if you start messing around with 3D, you'll notice that the camera has two different properties. It has a property of its position as well as its orientation. And those two things have to work together for your camera positioning to work right. But if you link your camera to a null, all you have to worry about is your position. You don't have to worry about your orientation. Your camera just kind of moves more like you would normally think. It's a little easier to work with at first.
Okay, so I've got the camera spinning around this particle producer. And if at some point there's a lot to go into. Basically, where the particles, I would shut them off, and where the particles are stopped being produced, I take the beginning of the particles production as a pre-comp and add it to that point where the particles are through producing. And so what happens is when these guys are done, the next row, the next set starts. So it looks like a seamless transition between the production of particles.
Trent, do you want to just add show how you can make a solid and lay it underneath there so it looks like we have a little floor piece that we're kind of rotating around so people can see how the camera is rotating around there. Anytime when you're working in 3D, he can throw that layer in there and spin the camera around all he wants. It's not going to look like it's in 3D until you click the little 3D layer cube icon next to that solid or to your null. It won't exist in 3D space. You only have an XY dimension. You won't have an X, Y, and Z. And so you have to do that to make your stuff work in 3D.
Right there.
So now that we have that in 3D, now we can actually rotate that and then pull it down, and you'll be able to see that we'll turn it into the floor that, or as close to the floor as we can make it kind of thing. And now as we rotate around, you can see that those particles are falling on that floor. So you can stylize that floor however you want. You could, add that faded circle to it.
Put a grid on it.
And you can change that grid spacing and size. And again, this is where it comes to just messing around and knowing what effects do. Knowing that the grid effect makes a bunch of lines in a grid pattern.
Right.
And knowing that you can go to those things at any time.
And it may seem a little bit goofy, just the grid effect, but I'll give you an example here.
One thing, as Trent's looking for that, one thing you can use a grid for pretty quickly. Also, there's another effect, but you can use a grid to make a disco ball. You can use a grid, and you can. There's a CC sphere effect that quickly turns any layer into a 3D sphere. Well, a fake 3D sphere. And you can quickly make yourself a nice looking disco ball using a grid effect. So it can come in handy in a multitude of ways. The one disclaimer about 3D and After Effects is 3D is not 3D. 3D is 2.5D. You'll never have depth on an object. You can spin something around, but you'll never be able to extrude it and actually see the side of it. So it's postcards in space is the way I was always or that's when I was taught in school that, but you can see there with CC Sphere and the grid effect, you pretty quickly have yourself a little, you could do your missions globe with a dove flying out of it. Just totally joking.
Put some flags behind.
Flags behind it, and then a flame inside of it. And we can cover all the faux pas right in one animation. If you have a globe for your missions, it's totally okay. It seems like a pretty natural thing to have. Yeah, a question.
I'm very much a novice, and so you were talking about something about Flash.
Yes.
Is that, you started with that?
Well, you don't. Yeah, Flash is it's a animation and web design program. So it's more for the web. Flash, any video players you see online are done in Flash. A lot of websites that are really heavy animation and heavy interactivity, those are usually done in Flash. It's not necessarily something that you need to start with before After Effects. What I would recommend you start with is Photoshop, because After Effects is Photoshop in motion. And so after you learn some of the effects in Photoshop and how layers work in Photoshop, how blending modes work in Photoshop, you can jump into After Effects, and all of those same principles apply, but you can animate it. Barton Damer, who does a lot of the design work and that kind of stuff, he started in just plain old 2D design in Illustrator and Photoshop. And after he learned all of his design and took his design, then he was given the tools of After Effects and other programs and just put that into motion. And so I would say that your first stop is Photoshop and Illustrator. Those are going to teach you some of the basics that you're going to use in every single program. We talked about the pen tool when we were changing that,
the Bezier
path,
curve.
the Bezier curve. You're going to learn the pen tool inside Illustrator, and that's really going to help you out. Trent, I think, found his
This is not the one I was looking for, but this is a good example of just some random things we've been talking about already. The stuff going on there, disappearing into the back, is a grid effect with just some other things done to it. This stuff, the colored clouds that are flying out there, are the fractal noise. And fractal noise is looping. I've added some color overlays. They're attached to a cylinder. I think I may have even used the offset effect to get them to wrap around the cylinder. So just a few of those things, add a little color, and there's your loop. It was an echo loop we used last
Yeah, go
year.
ahead.
I really liked Bridge when I first started taking a class in this, to see some of the effects that are out there.
Yep. Yeah, you can use Adobe Bridge, and you can use that to preview stuff. It's a way you can preview video, audio, all that kind of stuff, and you can do it in every Adobe program across the suite. But you can also, they have all their presets and stuff, and so you can go in After Effects and just say, what is this, what is this? And it will show you that, so that's a great tip. Does anybody else have any questions? Yeah, go ahead.
What third-party plugins do you know? There's a ton of them out there.
There's a ton of plugins out there. The place that most people are going to tell you to go is to redgiant.com. And at redgiant.com, they have managed to, and I'm not saying this in a bad
And
way.
also, it's also trapcode.com.
Right. They have managed to get a bunch of great plugins under one umbrella, and they bought a company called Trapcode, and they now sell their stuff. But Trapcode has a plugin called Particular, they have Horizon, they have Lux, and a lot of different things that do some really cool stuff. Red Giant also sells Magic Bullet Looks, which is a really cool plugin that will quickly change your footage and make it look like you can instantly have all of the film looks that you see in TV shows and movies. You can make your stuff look like CSI Miami in about 2 clicks and give it that look, and you're good to go. Does come with a price. There is nonprofit versions of it. They do have a nonprofit version of all of their stuff that you can buy. We do have a promo from Red Giant, I think.
Yes, they're actually providing us with a full suite of Trapcode software. So if you follow Red Giant, tweet on Twitter, and then tweet the phrase Echo Conference. It's just, and they will enter you for a drawing. One randomly selected Twitterer will win that.
The one thing that I'll say about plugins real quickly is that you don't need to use all these plugins. You don't have to buy third-party plugins. They make stuff a lot easier sometimes. But what comes defaulted inside After Effects, the Keen plugin, After Effects, Adobe has managed to convince a few different companies, or I don't know how they worked it out, but they've included third-party plugins defaulted in After Effects. So there's a plugin called Keylight. It's by Sonic Found, or I can't remember who it's by, but
sure.
It's an amazing Keen plugin. It's what we use on our show every week. You can green screen your stuff and make it look great and you don't have to pay any money for any extra plugins or anything like that, and you'll get a really great key out of it. And anytime you see a CC plugin, that's because those are all from another company, but Sycor, and they've included all of those plugins for free inside of After Effects. So that particle generator we were using, that's normally a paid-for thing, but Adobe's included that for free for you. So I would encourage you guys to start leveraging what's in there first before you go outside spending extra money that you don't have to buying whiz-bang tricks here and there of certain plugins. Because a lot of times you can use them for a lot of stuff, but a lot of times people turn to them as a one-trick wonder.
Right. And you can be creative. Just try and be creative with what you have. The fractal noise, like I was saying in that countdown, the fractal noise moving with a loop put around a cylinder. So, you take a layer, you make a cylinder out of it, and you're like, okay, great, a cylinder. What am I going to do with that? All I did was apply the cylinder to my fractal noise and point it at the camera. The camera's looking down the cylinder, the fractal noise is going by. So effects that you don't think would do anything useful for you, play around with them. The longer you work with After Effects, the more your brain will think about those effects and think, man, I can do stuff with that.
And it does take time. I neither of us learned After Effects and we're making the stuff that we're making today overnight. It
Right.
didn't happen in a month, didn't even happen in a year. We're still, I mean, I wrote that looping fractal noise thing 3 days before I came to this conference. It wasn't something that, you need to just continually be learning. All of those sites on that sheet, I go to all the time. Every time aetutorials.com or .net or whatever it is comes out with a new tutorial, I'm watching that thing. I'm watching them all, and sometimes I sit there and I'm like, okay, yeah, I knew you were going to do that, and
Yeah.
I could have figured that
Of course you did that.
Of course you did that, but sometimes I'm like, wow, how did he pull that off? That is amazing. And so I really want to encourage you guys to immerse yourself in those tools and in those websites, because they really will teach you guys a lot, and you're not going to just figure it all by yourself. You can by tinkering around, but it really does help to have all those, and that's why we provided that sheet for you.
And yeah, not just that. If you look here, you see down here is a 40% off promo code. If you don't win the suite, you at least have a 40% off promo code. Just put Echo 40 in when you check out, but it's only good until August 1st. So keep that in mind.
So I doubt anyone listening to this after will be able to get that.
Right.
Unfortunately, you guys missed out. Should have
but
come to the conference.
This is also very important for us, not because we think we're cool, but we are on Twitter, and we would love for you to interact with us. That's how, we kind of started getting to know each other on Twitter, and we bounce stuff off each other because we have gotten to know each other. And you were talking about user groups earlier. If you are not a part of a user group, you should probably start a user group, okay? Look in your area, do an internet search, try and find if there are people in your area that are looking at After Effects, talking about After Effects. If there are companies in your area that are using After Effects, find those guys and say, hey, I'm looking to learn, or I know a lot and I would love to share what I've got, so let's get together and talk about it. Because not only are you going to become better designers, you're going to make friends. And I stood in the parking lot with a couple of guys 2 months ago and talked about Jesus with a guy who had just come to the After Effects user group. So, it's not just believers. It's people who are just interested in improving themselves in After Effects and should get together. If you don't have a team, make friends. You can talk with us. We are very interested in helping you improve your craft.
Yeah, and if you guys have any questions about After Effects or other church media related stuff, you guys can email me. It's brad@ChurchMediaDesign.tv. I have business cards up here that have my email address and my Twitter and my website on there that I would love to give to you guys, to give to other people or to keep for yourself. Because I really want to help make sure you guys are resourced and that you don't feel like you're out there trying to learn this stuff on your own, because I knew how that felt and I don't really want you guys to have to feel that way. So if you guys want to do that, that would be great. I'll just throw out a shameless plug for my show. I would love for you guys to tune in. We release episodes. We've been a little off because of conferences lately, but Mondays at 10
Brad,
a.m. Eastern.
It's not the conferences that make you a little off, buddy.
Well, yeah, I'm a little different, but I'm trying to get off the Mountain Dew. But we release an episode every Monday at 10 a.m. Eastern time. We try to stick to that schedule. We cover everything from podcast. We just did a series on click track videos and did it from start to finish on how to make an entire click track video. We've done a whole bunch of different stuff. We got 75 episodes now. So
And they do freebies, free giveaways.
And every single week I try to have a freebie for you guys, and usually it's a motion background. So I'm guessing, I could go look, but I'm guessing there's like a good 30 to 40 free motion backgrounds on my website that you can find. So I'd love for you guys to go check that out.
I'm not sure how often Igniter Media does the free.
If you sign up for their
giveaway.
Newsletter, you'll find out
Yeah,
when their free stuff comes out, because I take advantage of their
Okay.
free stuff.
Cool. And you can sign up at ignitermedia.com. Interact with us. It's a lot of fun getting to know you guys. I'm also a Final Cut Pro user, so I'm excited about that software as well.
I'm a Premiere user, and I'm excited about that software.
Very
so
good.
guys
We got you
can,
covered. We got you covered.
We got both worlds covered. We're going to wrap up here. And if you guys have any more questions or anything like that you guys would like to ask, we would love to answer those things. I'm going to say see you later to you guys who are watching this online, and thanks for tuning in. Next week we'll be talking about a lot of different things. I'm going to cover a YouTube HD download thing that I found out, and a bunch of other little quick tips that I've learned in the past month that I haven't been able to give you guys. So make sure you tune in next week. Leave comments on the website. Go to ChurchMediaDesign.tv/subscribe to subscribe for our newsletter, and a whole lot more. So make sure you guys tune in next week for Church Media Design TV. I'll see you guys later.
That was so weird watching you talk to the camera.